Morning, everybody. I am Brett Pape. That's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Morning, Coach. You ready for the Week 4 slate?
I'm ready, man. Let's get it. Let's get after it.
Let's get into it. Hope you've had a great week. It's good to see you again. We had no Wednesday show this week. My daughter was playing a high school flag football game Wednesday night, so obviously that took priority, but here we are this morning. Before we get started, if you can do us a huge favor, hit subscribe to the Yards Per YouTube page at the bottom. Also hit the like button, and we'll get going. If you have any start-sit questions, please send them in. Please include PPR or non-PPR. Let's get into it, Coach. Cincinnati Bengals 0-3 at Carolina Panthers 1-2. My pick. Coach, I like what I saw last week because I like seeing Carolina go to Las Vegas, pull off the win. You got Andy Dalton there, who's obviously a competent quarterback. You saw what he did with that offense. So I'm picking the upset. I like the Panthers 24, Bengals 21. What says you, Coach?
Yeah, we're close on that, man. It was good to see Andy Dalton, 36 points, 437 yards of offense for Carolina last week, but I think Joe Burrow's put together a couple back-to-back games. So I've got it close too, 27-24, but I'll take the Bengals.
All right, let's get into our start-sit. Coach has got all the visiting teams today. I have all the home teams. So first up, Cincinnati start and sit. Cincinnati's offense is 13 in scoring, 28 in rushing yards, 6th in passing yards. Facing a Carolina defense that's given up the 32nd in points allowed, 28th in rushing yards, 17th in passing yards. Who do you like to start this week for Cincinnati, Coach?
Yeah, so you can tell based on those rankings for Carolina, this is a defense you can certainly move the ball against, whether it's on the ground or through the air. But so Joe Burrow, I've got him as a must start this week. Over his last 2 games, he's completed over 70% with 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. He's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in both weeks, so he's a start for me. Zach Moss is also a start, getting over 63% of the rushing attempts and a 75% snap share in 2 consecutive games. More encouraging was his 6 targets in the passing game last week. He's in my lineup. Jamar Chase, I think that's an obvious one, right? You have Jamar Chase, you're putting him in your lineup. I don't think we have to dive too deep into the stats there. And then Mike Gesicki, he's a start for me as well. He's had at least 3 grabs in every game this season, including last week, and he finished with 4 for 47 yards on 5 targets. He's finished as a top 12 tight end in back-to-back weeks, and Carolina's given up 15.2 fantasy points per game to the tight end position, so I like Mike Gesicki. As far as sits, I've got Chase Brown as a sit. Did see a season-high 7 carries last week and turn that into 62 yards, 8.9 yards per carry. But a 37% rushing share, which is the highest this season, and a 23% snap share. We're still not there yet in terms of volume. Feel confident putting him into your lineup. So I've got him as a sit this week.
Okay, but before we move on, let me talk a little bit about that tight end spot. You bring up Mike Gesicki. I think if you looked at the usage over the last couple of weeks, you've seen Eric All have an uptick, and Eric All for me is a great dynasty stash if he's available. I wouldn't even mind picking him up in redraft leagues for later on in the year.
Love Eric All.
Over the last couple of weeks, you've seen him get a heck of a lot more playing time. Had 4 targets last week, only for 22 yards, but I really like Eric All going forward in this offense. Moving on, Carolina starts sit. Carolina offense, 26th in scoring, 26th in rushing yards, 26th in passing yards. However, last week with Andy Dalton, you saw 36 points scored. You saw 131 rushing yards and 306 passing yards. So obviously the offense is much better with Andy Dalton. They are facing a Cincinnati defense that is 26th in points allowed, 26 in rushing yards, and 8 in passing yards. Let's get to the Carolina start and sit. For quarterback Andy Dalton, quarterback 22 on the week. I got him as a playable guy in Superflex. Quarterback 8 last week. So, I don't mind you start him in 1 quarterback leagues. Running back, Chuba Hubbard, running back 18 for the week. He had 26 touches last week for 169 yards. You saw when they have a competent quarterback that they're able to run the ball because of the fact that teams can't just simply stack the box. So I like Chuba Hubbard, and you might as well play him because his days are numbered with Jonathan Brooks coming soon. Running back Miles Sanders the sit. Wide receiver Deontay Johnson was kind of struggled a little bit with an injury on the injury report this week, but I saw late last night He is going to play elite route runner. I've heard you say that for 4 years. So we finally saw that last week with Andy Dalton. He finishes the wide receiver 6th. Did miss Thursday's practice with a groin injury, but he did return to work. So he is a start for me. Adam Thielen on the IR. Jonathan Mingo and Xavier Legette, their sits, as is tight end. Javion Sanders is a sit as well. Coach, anything you would change with that one?
No, I think it's very encouraging with Deontay Johnson to see 14 targets and 36% target share. And I think that was expected with that uptick with Andy Dalton, the guy that can, the red rifle that can sling a little bit. So great to see him come back a little bit.
All right, we've got some questions already. In between each game, we're going to get to as many questions as we possibly can. So first up, Brian's got a must win. Hey, they're all must wins. Wide receiver, half PPR. You've got Olave, London, or Brian Thomas. Coach, I didn't call up the rankings, but just looking at this, you have Olave, who came into the night. Actually, I said last night, wasn't sure if he was going to play. He is going to play. You got London, who's now really established himself as the number 1 wide receiver in Atlanta. And you got Brian Thomas, who, despite the fact that they have the slot receiver, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas seems to be becoming the wide receiver 1 for Jacksonville. Hasn't meant much because Jacksonville's kind of struggled, but I like what I see out of Drake. So it's Drake for me. Coach, who do you like in this one?
We're on the same page, man. I'm Drake London as well. I think it's a good matchup as a perimeter receiver against the Saints defense this week. So I like Drake London there as well.
Okay, let's move on to Jonathan. Jonathan, 0.5 PPR. We've got Garrett Wilson, Jaden Reed, or Terry McLaurin. Garrett Wilson last week, kind of hope he had get a little bit more, but it is Wilson for me. I feel like what we saw last week out of the quarterback Aaron Rodgers, kind of looking more like Aaron Rodgers, and Garrett Wilson is for me is a must start. But I do like Jaden Reed. I love the fact that he's got Jordan Love back. We'll talk more about that later. And if you saw Terry McLaurin on Monday night with what Jaden Daniels looked like, I think they're all 3 pretty good starts. Of the 3, who do you like more, Coach?
Yeah, so I actually like Garrett Wilson the least, just due to matchup this week and what they've done on the corner position against opposing wide receivers on the perimeter. But Jaden Reed gets Jordan Love back, and it's going to be interesting to see what the play calling looks like there. I'm a big believer in Matt LaFleur as a play caller. Of course, Terry McLaurin last week gets a favorable matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. I would eliminate Wilson there, and it's between Reed and McLaurin for me, and I would lean Terry McLaurin this week just based on the matchup with Arizona. I think that's a higher scoring game. I think the over-under there is 49.5, so I'll take McLaurin.
I like that, especially with the fact that, Reed it's his first week back with Love. Let's see what that offense looks like. So I like that. Next one, we have got Gesicki or Kincaid. We kind of talked about all kind of being more of a focal point in the offense. So that's a pretty easy one for me. That's Kincaid.
Yeah, it's Kincaid for me too. Josh Allen, I know what people want to say, tough matchup this week against Baltimore, but I still think Kincaid is the guy there.
All right, Jared Nelson, half PPR. Would you start Christian Kirk versus the Houston Texans or Jacoby Myers versus I believe they play the Browns? Of those 2, Coach, what do you like better in that one? Got no Devontae Adams, so that might help Myers.
It's an interesting matchup there. And, of course, it was Trey Tucker that balled out last week for the Raiders with Devontae Adams, obviously facing the injury. But I like Christian Kirk this week. We'll get into that a bit more when we get in the Jacksonville lineup. I think this is a toss-up because Christian Kirk, after struggling through the first 2 games, did see the target share we expected him to see last year. They finally remembered who Christian Kirk was, what he means to this offense. I think the upside with Kirk to find the end zone is higher than Jacoby Myers with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. So I lean Christian Kirk in that matchup.
Okay, Legendary One, thank you so much for the $1.99. Truly appreciate it. It looks like he only needs to start one of this group. Actually, it might be one of the quarterbacks and then one of these other guys. For me, it's Hurts over Fields. Which receiver out of Hopkins, Rashid, Pittman, Kirk, or Olave works for you?
Well, I've got Olave ranked highest out of those wide receivers. I do think that Rashid bounces back after having 5 targets last week with no receptions. We'll get into the Colts, only 15 catchable throws per week for Anthony Richardson, so I don't trust Michael Pittman yet. So I'll lean Olave there, and I'm with you on Hurts over Fields.
Okay, let's go to Braden. Once again, thank you so much, Legendary One. Braden, he's got Deontay Johnson or T. Higgins standard format. With it being standard format, that means it's non-PPR. I like Higgins over Johnson. Let's go to Todd McMillan here. Todd, thank you so much for coming in. 12-man full point league. Should I start Fryermuth or Andrews this week? Oh, isn't that rough? As someone who drafted Mark Andrews pretty high in the Scott Fish Bowl, I think I picked him in the 4th round. It's obviously been a tough start. So of those two, who do you like better?
Well, it's interesting. It's expert rankings still put Mark Andrews above. And of course, I think I broke down the Ravens this week. But week 1, it was Isaiah Likely. Week 2, it was Mark Andrews. And last week, it was Charlie Kohler with one grab for 30 yards. It had the yardage. So we really don't know what's going on in that tight end room. So I'm going to go with what I think is a more comfortable pick. And I think it's Pat Fryermuth this week for the Steelers.
All right, let's go to Bande Opart. Akers or Shaheed, 0.5 PPR. Joe Mixon is out. So that's obviously favorable for Akers, but it's Shaheed for me. What do you think, Coach?
Yeah, it's tough, right? It's like upside of Shaheen, boom or bust. He's had a couple long receptions and touchdowns the first 2 weeks and threw up the dud last week. And of course, with Akers, you're going to get the rushing volume. So in half PPR, I probably lean Akers just because I think the volume he's going to see versus Rashid. You're hoping he catches a long one, but with Olave playing this week, there's a chance he might have been out. Now that he's back and Taysom Hill is also back this week, I'd probably go with the running back and half PPR.
Okay,
we didn't help you there.
Say that again.
We didn't help him there, man. We probably went 50-50 on that one, but that's all right.
All right. I like Shaheed. You said you like Akers. He can make the decision from there. But let's go. We've got a question. Is Swift a good buy low? He's not a good buy low for me. I feel like we've been waiting for a breakout for years. Every year it's been a different situation. We expected more last year. We did get 1,000 yards out of him. However, a lot of it came in one game. So with that being said, I'm not looking to buy him at all.
No, the Eagles' offensive line last year versus Chicago Bears' offensive line this year. I think Rashawn Johnson's starting to solidify himself as the number 1 running back. I think we'll see that this week and next week.
Alex Johnson, thank you so much for always popping in. Thank you for all your help and support. So thank you so much. Good morning. Good luck in your show, which starts here soon. Let's get back to another question before we get to our next game. Andrew, flex spot, Spears or Zamir White? God, I expected a lot more out of Zamir White so far this year. Haven't you, Coach?
Yeah, I sure have. And it's a tough one, right? Because Zamir White, you're hoping that he's going to get the touches and the volume, but what he's done with the volume he's gotten has been extremely inefficient. Madison was the guy that kind of stepped up last week. So I like Madison over White. I think he starts to take that over. And of course, Pollard's been the guy. We thought to be more of a split backfield in Tennessee, but it's been mostly Tony Pollard. We'll get to that in the breakdown of the Titans game. But I would lean Spears there, even though Zamir White might see more volume. I like the upside of Spears to break one this week.
Okay, so that's Spears for us, Andrew. Thank you so much. Again, we'll get into each one of the questions in between each game. Let's get into our second game of the week. That is New Orleans Saints 2-1 at the Atlanta Falcons 1-2. My pick. I like Atlanta winning. I like them winning 21-17. What says you, Coach?
There you go. Hey, I picked Atlanta Falcons to win the division, so I got to go ride or die here. I'm going with the Saints 23-20 in a close one. I'm sorry, Falcons in a close one, 23-20.
All right, New Orleans Saints start and sit. New Orleans offense ranking 2nd in scoring, 6th in rushing yards, 20 in passing yards. Atlanta defense ranking 13 in points allowed, 27 in rushing yards, 11 in passing yards. Who's your starts for the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, so I like the run game this week for the Saints. I'm starting Alvin Kamara. He's been questionable with the hip and rib injury. Looks like he's going to go. If he's playing, he's in your lineup. Atlanta's 27th in rushing yards allowed, but they have not given up a touchdown to running back this season on the ground or through the air. I think Kamara finds the end zone this week. Kamara is in my lineup. As far as, and then of course, Rashid Shaheed, we talked about him a little bit. If Olave is out, Rashid Shaheed becomes a better option. We know Olave is now playing. Deeper leagues and formats, I'm still okay with Rashid Shaheed for the upside there. And then Taysom Hill comes back from a chest injury this week, could play in a decent role with Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara potentially out. Again, we know they're both in now, so I don't like Taysom Hill this week, so he's a sit for me. Jamal Williams is a sit. If Kamara would have been out, he's the guy that would have stepped in, but obviously at RB55 this week with Kamara in, I don't trust Jamal Williams. And Derek Carr, after completing 77% of his passes for 443 yards and 5 tutties over the first 2 games against the Cowboys and Panthers, who can't stop a nosebleed defensively through the first 3 weeks of the season. He threw for 142 yards last week against the Eagles defense that figured it out in a 15-12 loss. Atlanta's defense has given up just 2 touchdown passes and 556 yards passing, so I'm out on Derek Carr this week.
So we ready for Atlanta here, Coach?
I am.
All right, let's get into Atlanta start and sit. Atlanta's offense, 26th in scoring, 18 in rushing yards, 18 in passing yards. The New Orleans Saints defense, 5th in points allowed, 8th in rushing yards, 25th in passing yards. Kirk Cousins, quarterback 24 on the week. However, he's quarterback 27 in fantasy points scored on the season. He plays a tough defense. So for me, he's only a start in Superflex, but I would hope that I had someone else to go. Running back 3, Bijan Robinson on the week. He's a start. You draft him high. You expect him to give you great production, so I'm playing him. Tyler Algier, sit. Wide receiver 16 on the week, Drake London. He's a start. Has 27% target share the last 2 games and has 3 red zone targets in that time. Wide receiver 40, Darnell Mooney. He's a sit. Ray McLeod, a sit. And then now let's get to Kyle Pitts. Tight end 6 on the week. Tight end injuries makes him a start. Could produce this week with New Orleans being one of the worst defenses against tight ends. Let's get to a question. We've got legendary one once again. Flex 1, Garrett Wilson, Adunze, Ramondre Stevenson, or Pierce. Pierce is out, so he's definitely not a contender. Who do you like of the other 3, Coach?
I like Rome Odunze this week. I think the vertical passing game is where Chicago finds the strength this week in their matchup. So I like Rome Odunze. I get Ramondre Stevenson, gets the volume. I don't know if this is PPR or standard scoring, but I would lean Rome Odunze. I think he has a big week this week for Chicago.
All right, let's get to defenses. Ryan here. He's got the Jets, Chiefs, Steelers. Who would you guys start this week? Of those 3, Coach, I think I'm starting the Chiefs. They're facing a banged-up Los Angeles Chargers team. Who would you face? Who would you start in that group?
Yeah, I would start the Chiefs too. I mean, the Chargers are without their left tackle and their right tackle, Sean Slater and Joe Alt, both out. There's some injuries there. So obviously we know Herbert's hobbled. So yes, I'm with you there.
Okay, Jace Johnson, flex 1 spot. J.K. Dobbins or T. Higgins. We just talked about the Kansas City defense. You saw J.K. Dobbins struggle a little bit last week against the Pittsburgh offense against the Pittsburgh defense. It's T. Higgins for me. I do expect a breakout game from T. Higgins this week. I'm
with you. I'm in on T. Higgins this week as well.
All right, let's go to Tech Gamer. We've got Aaron Jones or Gibbs this week, PPR. I know Seattle defenses look good all year. They're 3-0. But Gibbs at home, I'm taking Gibbs. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, revenge game for Aaron Jones, right? So I do expect him to try to get him a touchdown, but I just love the volume, both the passing game and the run game for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I like Detroit's matchup this week at home, so I'll take Jahmyr Gibbs as well.
Thomas has got a question. Full PPR. Am I crazy for wanting to start both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving?
Michael Irvin, I love it.
Yeah, well, he's not able to play yet, Coach, or not able to play any longer.
Yeah.
The reason why I said him is I saw him yesterday on the sidelines in the Miami game, or I guess that was Friday, getting him all pumped up. So for whatever reason, he was in my head. Other options include Michael Wilson, Rashawn Johnson, Xavier Legret, and Cortland Sutton. Of that group, yeah, I'd feel comfortable doing that. I know Rachaad White, you can't be too happy with what you've gotten out of him, but that is a backfield that's certainly almost 50-50, so I would be okay doing that. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I think it's been more 50-50 too, and even Corey Bushland, who we've had on for Fantasy Stock Exchange as a guest on the show, he really likes Rachaad White this week. I do think in the passing game, Rachaad White is still a little bit more relevant, but I like Bucky Irving as a runner as well, and I think the upside's certainly going to be there. But yeah, based on those lineups, I don't have a problem starting both those guys. I think they both see volume this week.
I think they're one of a couple backfields that you can start both backs, and we're going to get to another one a little bit later. But one of them is the New York Jets, and I did not expect Braylon Allen to come in this year and do what he's done already. So we'll probably get into a little bit Braylon talk a little bit later. But here we go. Andrew's got full PPR, Scary Terry or Deontay Johnson. I'm going with a matchup. I like Scary Terry in this one.
Yeah, I think it's matchup too. I think Deontay Johnson obviously is coming out last week with Dalton getting a start behind center in Carolina, so I love Deontay Johnson rest of season. But Scary Terry gets the Arizona defense, and I think the touchdown upside is there more so than for Deontay Johnson. So I go with Terry as well.
Let's get to Cam here. He's got a PPR question: Worthy or Jawan Jennings? I think Worthy right now at best is a best ball play. It's hard for me to put him in when he's only given you what he gave you in week one. Right. So, and what you saw last week out of Jawan Jennings, you still, I still like him. I know Debo is back, so that could change some things, as well as Kittle. So it's kind of a tough one, but I'm going to go with Jennings.
I still go Juwan Jennings as well. I think even with Debo and Kittle back, I think the Niners are 1-2. I think they're going to lay it on him this week. So I would go with Juwan Jennings as well. I still think he's relevant in that offense.
I mean, if you heard what Shanahan said during the week, he talked about over the last couple of years, there hasn't been a better separator on the team than Juwan Jennings, and you saw that last week against the Rams. But let's move on. Let's go Jacksonville Jaguars 0-3 at Houston Texans 2-1. I like the Texans 24, Jaguars 21. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Man, we're close. I got Houston 24, Jacksonville 19. The Texans offense hasn't been as explosive as we thought they would be this year. They're 22nd EPA per drive and 30th in success rate. And there's no Tank Dell this week and possibly Joe Mixon, although I don't know what the latest report is. I know that comes out right at 9:30. We have to check on Joe Mixon's status, but I still think Houston has enough to win. He is out. Okay.
He is out.
Yeah, but I'm still taking the Texans. I think that's right. We talked about Cam Akers earlier. I still think the Texans win this one 24-19.
All right, Jacksonville starting sit. Jacksonville offense rankings 30th in scoring, 16 in rushing yards, 27 in passing yards. You got to love that contract that their quarterback just got. Yeah, Trevor just got. Okay, Houston defense 23 in points allowed, 7 in rushing yards, 6 passing yards. Go ahead, Coach. Break down the starting sit for Jacksonville.
Yeah, Houston 6th against the pass, and Jacksonville 27th as an offense in the passing game. So I think you guys know where I'm going with Trevor Lawrence. He's a sit for me. He's completing just 53% of his passes for 560 yards and just 2 touchdowns for the first 3 games. I'm out on Trevor Lawrence. Christian Kirk, I'm in. We talked about him a little bit earlier with some starts and sits. After pulling in just 2 grabs combined in weeks 1 and 2, he rebounded with 8 grabs for 79 yards. I think Jacksonville realized Christian Kirk's a guy that's got to touch the football. He had a 21.7% target share and a 32% first read share. He's the first receiver they're looking at in the progression. Those are encouraging for Christian Kirk. It's a good matchup this week. I like him. I'm out on Gabe Davis. Has not had a game with more than 3 grabs this season and has not found the end zone either. He's got just 8 grabs for 118 yards through 3 games. So I'm out on Gabe Davis. So and then Travis Etienne, he's not a must start for me. He's certainly not a must sit based on volume play where you drafted him. You're probably putting him in your lineup, but I don't love him this week. He has no top 20 finishes this season, has failed to score more than 15 points in any game. Houston is allowing just 3.2 yards per carry to running backs this season. He's not a must start for me. If you've got better options, I'd go the other direction.
Okay, let's move on to the Houston start sit. Houston offense ranked 21st in scoring, 17th in rushing yards, 8th in passing yards. Jacksonville defense 28th in points allowed, 11th in rushing yards, and 30th in passing yards. So you just see the defense that C.J. Stroud is facing this week. His quarterback 6 on the week. He's obviously start for me. Running back Joe Mixon is out. Cam Akers, running back 30 on the week. He's still a sit for me. I feel like you should have better options. However, if you don't, I get it. But he only had 10 carries for 28 total yards in his start last week against Minnesota. Minnesota defense is obviously a little bit better than Jacksonville. So I get the start if you do play him. Nico Collins, for me, is a must start, even though he did pop up late in the week with an injury. But he did come out and said he's definitely playing. Brings us to wide receiver 14 on the week, Stephon Diggs. He's a start. He's wide receiver 13 in fantasy points a game on the year. Tank Dell, he's obviously a sit because he is out. Tight end Dalton Schultz is ranked 10th on the week. He's a sit. Unless with all the injuries, you got to play him. He only has a 9.8 target share on the season, a 9.5 first read share. So that's it for the Houston. Anything you would change with any of those guys, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, the one player we differ on is Cam Akers with Joe Mixon out. I think, Jacksonville's 4th most fantasy points allowed to running backs and 2nd most receiving yards. So I think there is an possibility for Cam Akers in a deeper format for the injuries we have this year. Cam Akers, based on your lineup, might be a play for you.
Okay, let's go Denver Broncos 1-2 at New York Jets 2-1. I like the Jets winning 24-14. Who do you like, Coach?
Yeah, I got Jets 26-13. Nice to see Bo Nix get his first NFL win last week, but this Jets defense is a little bit different and you're on the road. So give me the Jets.
All right, Denver start and sit. Denver's offense rankings 23 in scoring, 22 in rushing yards, 19 in passing yards, facing the Jets defense that is 8th in points allowed, 22nd in rushing yards allowed, and 4th in passing yards allowed. Who's your starting sit in this one for Denver?
Yeah, so this is pretty easy, right? I don't have anybody on Denver that I trust this week against the Jets defense. Bo Nix, lowest passer rating under pressure in the NFL this season at just 12.2. Jets are only giving up 9.9 fantasy points to quarterbacks, so I'm out on Bo Nix. Javonte Williams, our run game, Jaleel McLaughlin, I don't trust it at all. Cortland Sutton, 27 targets sounds great through 3 games, but just 12 grabs for 132 yards and no touchdowns. A 6'4", 220-pound wide receiver shouldn't have just 4.9 yards per target. But that's what happens when you have just a 44% catch rate and a 48% catchable throw rate from Bo Nix when you are targeted. So I'm out on Cortland Sutton and all the pass catchers in that offense. So there's nobody in that Denver offense I'm comfortable starting against the Jets this week.
New York Jets starting sit. New York's offense ranks 14th in scoring, 21st in rushing yards, 13th in passing yards. Denver defense 6th in points allowed, 21st in rushing yards, and 2nd against the passing yards. Their defense makes it a little hard for me to start Aaron Rodgers this week. He's quarterback 20 on the year, quarterback 20 on the week. So for me, he's a super flex start only. Running back 2, Breece Hall, must start. Running back 33, we talked about him earlier, Braylon Allen. He's averaging 11.5 touches and 62 total yards a game. Finishes the running back 6 in week 2 and running back 30 last week. I feel good about starting in flex spots. Brings us to wide receiver 11, Garrett Wilson. He's a must start for me. Wide receiver 57 on the week, Alan Lazard. I think with all the injuries, I don't feel bad about starting him. He's wide receiver 18 on the year. Obviously, his time with Aaron Rodgers in the past has helped him out as he was virtually non-existent last year. Brings us to wide receiver 64 on the week, Mike Williams, sit. And Tyler Conklin. Tight end 15 for the week, went for 94 yards on 5 grabs last week, finishing as tight end 4. So I don't mind you starting Tyler Conklin. Anything you would change there, Coach?
Yeah, God, Garrett Wilson's a tough one, right? Patrick Surtain so far this year, I mean, he's held DK Metcalf to 29 yards, George Pickens to 29 yards, Mike Evans to 17 yards. So concerns there with Garrett Wilson. God, it's hard with a guy that's that talented to put him on your, to not play him. So depending on who you have.
In redraft, you're taking him in the 2nd and 3rd round.
Yep.
I get the tough matchup, but I don't know. I think there's a saying, you play your stud, so I'm playing it. Minnesota Vikings 3-0 at the Green Bay Packers 2-1. Brett's pick, I don't think it should be much of a surprise who I'm taking. We've got Green Bay 27, Minnesota 20. Coach, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, Jordan Love is back. Love what Malik Willis did. He exceeded my expectations in the 2 starts that he had, but now this opens up a full playbook for Green Bay. I've got Green Bay winning 23-21.
Let's go Minnesota start and sit. First, let me throw up this real quick.
Yeah.
Don, Brett, let's go. Yes, Pack, go Pack. Love it. Thank you for tuning in, Don. Minnesota start and sit. Minnesota offense, 3 points, third in points scored, 13th in rushing yards, 16th in passing yards. Facing a Green Bay defense that has been much better since week 1. They're averaging, they're 12 in points allowed, 10th in rushing yards, and 22 in passing yards. Who are your starts from the Minnesota offense?
So let's start with Sam Darnold. There's a lot of talk about him in the offseason and where they were going, especially when J.J. McCarthy went down with the injury. He leads the NFL with 8 touchdown passes. I think what makes his play more impressive, he has not attempted more than 30 passes in a game. So it's like you're getting a lot of passing volume. He has not completed more than 20 passes in a game. So his efficiency has been phenomenal. And even in a tough matchup against Green Bay, where you do attack Green Bay, 22nd in passing yards allowed this year, and you may be without Jair Alexander. I don't know what the latest reports are, but I do like Sam Darnold this week. Aaron Jones, revenge game? Could be. Rushing yards allowed by Green Bay sounds good on paper until you take a deeper dive. They've given up 5 yards per carry while also giving up the 5th most receiving yards to running backs. I like Aaron Jones this week. Justin Jefferson, you're never not playing him. Talent over situation. The Vikings moved on from Kirk Cousins, turned to Sam Darnold. There are some concerns about where Justin Jefferson ranks among the elite wide receivers. Yes, the target volume, he's only projecting 119 targets and 79 receptions over 17 games, but he's also projecting 1,547 yards. He scored in every game. That's a 17 touchdown projection. You're starting Justin Jefferson. I'm out on Ty Chandler. Obviously, Aaron Jones going to get a lot of volume. We have seen Chandler be a little bit more involved recently, but I'm not comfortable starting him. Jalen Naylor, great story. He's played well this year, but Jordan Addison is back, so I don't expect Jalen Naylor to be as heavily involved this week. And I'm out on Johnny Munt at tight end.
All right, let's get to the Green Bay starting sits. Green Bay offense, 7th in points scored, 1st in rushing yards, 22 in passing yards. Minnesota defense, 2nd in points allowed, 2nd in rushing yards allowed, 26th in passing yards. So obviously they're facing a great defense. Should be a good matchup for both sides of the ball. Quarterback 18 on the week, Jordan Love, first game back. For me, he's a sit in one quarterback leagues with a tough matchup with limited mobility, but great to see that he's back. Running back 16 on the week, Josh Jacobs. The Vikings have given up just one rushing TD on the season and give up the 3rd fewest rushing yards and 6th fewest fantasy points for running backs. It's hard not to start a volume guy like Jacob, but expectations should be tempered. Running back 45, Emmanuel Wilson. Love what I'm seeing. Great dynasty stash, but he is a sit. Romeo Doubs is a sit. The only guy I'm starting other than Jacobs is going to be Jaden Reed. Wide receiver 23 on the week with Love in week 1. Had over 170 yards and total yards and 2 TDs. So he's a start for me. Sitting everybody else. I will say this, though. Tucker Kraft, tight end 20 on the week. He's a sit. But with all the injuries, it may lead you to starting Kraft. I know that I have to start him in a league with Trey McBride out. And Minnesota has given up the 8th most points scored to a tight end this year. Anything you would change there, Coach?
No, yeah, I think you're dead on all of it, man. I'm Jaden Reed 100%. I still think he's the guy, and I think he's the number one option in that offense with Jordan Love back. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does this week.
All right. Hey, let's get a couple more questions in. First, let me recognize Don. Didn't realize who this was. Don's a commissioner in a few of my leagues. We've been, when we both got involved in all these Twitter leagues back in 2019, 20, Don was someone, JP was someone that I met on Twitter. Great guy, great commissioner. And if you guys don't, please tell your commissioners you appreciate them, because that is a job that is not fun, especially when you have managers like myself who take this stuff way too seriously and nitpick everything. So JP, Don, love you, brothers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Moving on, Ryan, full PPR, Debo or Addison? Coach, for me, I like Addison. I like Addison this week. Who do you like of those two?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. The only reason why I shy away from Addison is due to the matchup with Green Bay. I think this could be a run-heavy script. I wouldn't be surprised. Kevin O'Connell likes a little bit faster pace of play. But to me, if Debo's playing, we've seen what they do with Debo when he's in the lineup. He could be involved a little bit in the run game. So I take Debo for the safer floor. I would not be surprised to see either one of those guys see the end zone this week, though.
Okay, let's move on. Todd McMillan talking to Ryan makes Todd happy that Ryan's asking all these questions, because obviously it means he's not happy with his team. Love a little league rivalry here. And then let's go to
throw that one up there.
JS, we got one PPR, Debo, Shakir, or Higgins. For me, it's Higgins. Again, I don't know why. Not just that I don't know why, but I love Higgins' matchup this week. Who do you like, Coach?
Yeah, I'm okay going with Higgins there too. We just talked about Debo. I'm a big on Shakir, but like to see more longer length of target. He's a little bit more on the quick game, but so I love the talent with Shakir out of Boise State, but I would probably lean Higgins there as well.
Let's move on. Pittsburgh Steelers 3-0 at the Indianapolis Colts 1-2. I got the Steelers winning 17-13. Coach, who do you like?
Yeah, I've got Pittsburgh 23, Colts 20. I think it's a closer game. I think that this was a game I was almost going to pick the upset, man. I was almost like, hey, but just that Colts offense, Anthony Richardson right now is an issue. So I've got Pittsburgh winning that one.
All right, let's get to the Pittsburgh start and sit. Pittsburgh's offense, 24th in scoring, 12th in rushing, 29th in pass. Indianapolis defense, 13th points allowed. By far, they're not the worst rushing defense. I'm surprised, but they're 31st against the rush and 21st against the pass. Who are your starts for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so Justin Fields, he's QB 10 this week, and what a difference coaching and culture make. He's completing 73% of his passes and protecting the football, as he has just one turnover on the season. He's completed more than 73% of his passes in 2 out of 3 games and added another 90 yards on the ground with a touchdown. So I like Justin Fields this week. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren is out. Expect to see the Steelers continue to lean heavy on the run game against a 31st ranked run defense. So I like Najee Harris. Also would not be surprised to see Cordell Patterson find the end zone. I'm not comfortable enough with the volume there, so I'm not playing him, but I would not be surprised. He's a good anytime touchdown prop for me this week. And then George Pickens, it's a great matchup for him. Colts give up big games to both Nico Collins and Romeo Dunze on the perimeter this year. They give up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So I'm in on George Pickens. We talked about Pat Fryermuth earlier. You guys know I'm in on him. That was one of our start and sit questions early in the show. And then, there's been talk about Calvin Austin, what he did last week. I'm going to trust what we've seen with Calvin Austin over his career, so I'm out on Calvin Austin this week.
All right, let's get to the Indianapolis start and sit. Indianapolis offense, 17th in scoring, 11th in rushing, and 24th in passing. Pittsburgh defense, 1st in points allowed, 2nd in rushing yards, and then 5th in passing yards. So this is a terrible matchup for the Indianapolis offense. Quarterback 13th, Anthony Richardson. Let's talk real quick about start-sit questions that we get every week, because there are times where you and I will get, or anybody who goes on a limb and does this for the public, where they'll get a text or they'll get a DM saying, hey, you told me to start this guy and this guy didn't really work out for me. Well, last week, I believe I put out for everybody Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud. And obviously CJ Stroud was the better pick, but Anthony Richardson was the pick that you guys told me to go with. So remember that. That means I got one freebie down the road if I get one wrong.
That's right.
But let's get into quarterback 13, Anthony Richardson. You've already mentioned it earlier. 15th worst in catchable throws a game. If you looked at the interceptions and some of those passes that he thrown, it's just not there yet. And for me, I can't play him until I see more out of him. Running back 8, Jonathan Taylor must start despite facing the league's 2nd best rush defense. And then other than that, Coach, I'm not starting anybody else. I haven't seen enough out of that passing game to start anybody in the pass catching services for the Indianapolis Colts. Anything you would change there, Coach?
No, I think it's a tough matchup for Jonathan Taylor. As much as we like the rushing game, with that Colts offensive line has not been historically what it's been. So, yeah, I'm out on Anthony Richardson.
Los Angeles Rams 1-2 at the Chicago Bears 1-2. I like Rams finding a way to win. Loved what they did last week at home against San Francisco. I got the Rams winning 17-14. What says you, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Chicago Bears 22, Rams 16. Bears are top 10 in yards per game allowed, EPA per drive, and success rate. So I'll take the Bears at home.
I like it. Let's go. LA Rams offensive rankings: 20th in scoring, 29th in passing, in rushing yards, 9th in passing yards. Faces a Chicago defense that's 10th in points allowed, 17th in rushing yards, 7th in passing. Love this defense. If you watch that Sunday night game versus the Texans, they were flying all over the field. So it is a tough matchup. Tell us who you would start for the offensive players for the Rams.
Yeah, the only start for me for the Rams is Kyron Williams. He finished last week with 26 carries for 116 yards and found the end zone 3 times, scored twice on the ground and once through the air. He's really the only playmaker with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee all out. He's the only guy that I trust in this lineup. I think from a pass catcher perspective, DeMarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Whittingham, who was everyone's darling during the preseason. Flip a coin, try to figure out who the guy is from week to week. It's probably Tutu Atwell. I trust him the most, but I'm not starting any of those pass catchers. And then Matthew Stafford, Chicago's allowed the lowest pass rate in the NFL this season. And Stafford went from throwing the rock 49 times for 317 yards against Detroit in week 1 to throwing for less than 220 yards consecutive weeks. I'm out on Matthew Stafford.
Let's move on. Chicago starting sit. Chicago offense, 22 in scoring, 31st in rushing, 25th in passing. LA Rams defense, 31st in points allowed, 30th in rushing, 29th passing. So on paper, looks like a great matchup for the Chicago offense. Quarterback 17 on the week, Caleb Williams. Bears ran an absurd 84 offensive plays last week, resulting in Caleb Williams' first 300 passing yard game. He faces a very Rams defense that's not very good against either the rush or the pass. So I like Caleb today, but I'm only starting him super flex. Running back 32 on the week, DeAndre Swift. Only played 53% of the snaps last week. I'm out on him. Running back, Rashawn Johnson. He is a sit, but look for increased work role this week. Wide receiver 17, DJ Moore. He's a start for me, but it is concerning that he's only got 1 end zone target this season. Wide receiver 33, Rome Odunze. I like him. Breakout game last week. We'll see his route tree a little bit limited because Keelan Allen is back, but I do look for Rome to get loose on a long play today. Wide receiver 14, we mentioned Keenan Allen being back, first game since week 1. When playing in mostly in slot position, Allen is facing a defense who has allowed the 10th most points to slot receivers. So he's a good play if you need to play him. And then tight end 9 on the week, Cole Kmet. Let's be honest, if you got all the injuries that most people do at the tight end spot, and just simply poor play at the tight end spot, Cole Kmet is a start. He finally ran more routes last week than Gerald Everett, and the Rams have given up the third most fantasy points to tight ends. Coach, you like that one? You good with that game?
Yep, I love it, man. I love it. I'm big on a Doomsday this week, so I'm right there with you.
Philadelphia Eagles 2-1 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2-1. Buccaneers 31, Eagles 27 for me. I like the Buccaneers. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, interesting stat this morning if you're watching the NFL Network. Philly wins 62% of their games with Lane Johnson, only 37% without. He is out this week. You're out A.J. Brown. You're out Devontae Smith. It's going to be the if you've got Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley, right? But I've got Tampa Bay winning this game 24-17. I just think the Philadelphia Eagles are depleted offensively, and you have to travel on the road to Tampa Bay, who's looking to bounce back after a tough loss last week.
All right, let's get to the Philadelphia start and sit. May not be a lot since we've already just talked about what they're dealing with the injuries, but Philadelphia offense is 12th in scoring, 3rd in rushing, 5th in passing. Tampa Bay defense, 15th in passing, points allowed, 25th in rush, 24th in passing yards. Who are your starts for this one, Coach? Kind of heard it just a second ago.
Well, with Ryan Bendel listening in as a big Eagles fan, I'm going to tread lightly here, but Jalen Hurts is one of those guys that's an anomaly, right? Over the last 10 games, he's leading in 9 regular season games. He's turned the ball over 12 times. As a fantasy player, we get the upside in the run game. Man, it's been a struggle for Jalen Hurts over the last 10 games, and you look at the Eagles just offensively and what they've been doing. It's outside of Saquon Barkley, it has not been pretty, but Jalen Hurts is QB5 because of the rushing upside. I would still trust to put him in my lineup. Saquon Barkley has hit 100 yards rushing in 2 out of 3 games, and his low was for 95 yards. He scored 4 times on the ground, once through the air. Leads the NFL in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, longest run, rushing yards per game, touches, and total touchdowns. I think we all know he's playing. A.J. Brown out, Devontae Smith out. So that leaves you Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, Paris Campbell, and they just brought John Ross up from the practice squad. I think we all know nobody's playing any of those guys this week. I trust Dallas Goedert. I'm finished with 10 grabs for 170 yards on 11 targets last week with AJB and Devontae Smith leaving the game with concussion. AJB was already out. So it is the Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley show this week.
Let's get to the Tampa Bay start and sit before we get to another question. We've got Tampa Bay's offense. They are 15th in scoring, 27th in rushing, 23rd in passing. Philadelphia defense, 17th in points allowed, 24th in rush, and 18th in passing yards given up. Quarterback 15 on the week, Baker Mayfield. Quarterback 5 on the year, struggled last week. However, it is a tough matchup against an improved Eagles pass defense. I'm playing Baker Mayfield in super flex games. Running back 26, Rachaad White, super inefficient with a 32 ranking in explosive runs and 45th in yards contact per attempt. He's a sit for me, but I get it if you have to play him. Running back 31, Bucky Irving, averaging 10 touches and 60 total yards in 3 games. While Rachaad White has been inefficient, Bucky's been anything but that. The backfield takeover starting for Irving. It's something definitely to monitor. Wide receiver 9 on the season, on the week, Chris Godwin, he's a must start. Mike Evans, another must start. Brings us to our tight end, Cade Otton. He's a sit for me. The Eagles have allowed the 3rd fewest points to tight ends. Let's get to our next question. We've got, I'm extremely confused. Jalen Hurts or Caleb Williams? Who would you start of those two? Coach, who do you like better in that one?
Y'all are going to think I'm crazy, man. I'm reading the chat between Todd McMillan and Bendel talking about the Bears. And for those who don't know, Todd McMillan's a very humble guy, but he played for the Chicago Bears back in the day. But he's I'd go Caleb Williams. I like the matchup. Nikhil, hopefully I'm saying that right. If not, I apologize. But, yes, he has Rome Odunze. He has Keenan Allen back this week. You've got DJ Moore. You've got Rashawn Johnson. I think starting to get some of that share, which makes that run game, I think, a little bit more explosive. I like Caleb Williams this week over Jalen Hurts.
I like it. I like it because I don't have to make that decision.
I'll make it for you.
Let's go. New England Patriots 1-2 at San Francisco 1-2. My pick, I like San Francisco bouncing back 27, Patriots 14. Who do you like, Coach?
Yeah, I've got San Francisco 49ers 30, New England Patriots 13. I just don't think there's enough offensively for New England to stay in this game. San Francisco's getting some guys back this week. With Debo and Kittle returning the lineup, looks like Trent Williams might be a go as well. So I like San Francisco big this week.
Okay, New England start and sit. New England offensive ranks 34th in scoring, 8th in rushing, 32 in passing. San Francisco defense 21 points allowed, 9 rushing yards allowed, and 20th in passing yards allowed. New England start and sit. I'm expecting we're only going to hear one name per start. But why don't you go over that with us, Coach?
Well, you might be surprised at who that one name is. This week, based on the matchup on the negative game script, Demario Douglas is the only guy that I trust this week. Last week, he saw a season high 86% route participation, 30% targets per route run, and a 38% target share. 7 grabs for 69 yards. I think they're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more. So I think Demario Douglas has taken over as that wide receiver one in that offense. So I like him this week. Surprisingly, I'm not in on Ramondre Stevenson, which is probably where you thought I was going to go. He finished last week with 6 carries for 23 yards, did not have a target through 3 games. He's only given you 5 grabs for 15 yards in the passing game. He's the RB23 in PPR formats and the RB18 in standard formats, thanks to his 2 rushing touchdowns and 201 yards rushing through the first 2 games. I expect another blowout this week, which I think Rondé Stevenson's not getting touches in the fourth quarter later in the game. I think that's going to go to Antonio Gibson and somebody else. So Demario Douglas for me is the only play. Jacoby Brissett, I've said this every time he comes out and he plays somewhere on a team and gets an opportunity. He doesn't give you much in the passing game. He's completed more than 15 passes in a game this season. Hasn't happened. He's pulled last week in favor of Drake May due to a blowout loss to Jets. Has not passed for 150 yards in a game this season. And now there's only 1 touchdown pass in 3 games. Drake May time is coming, and it's coming soon.
Okay, let's get to San Francisco start and sit. San Francisco offense rankings 9th in scoring, 10th in rushing, 2nd in pass. New England defense 10th points allowed, 5th in rushing yards, 27th in passing yards. 27th in passing yards makes it pretty easy for me. At quarterback, I'm starting Brock Purdy, quarterback 12 on the week. I'm starting Jordan Mason, running back 5 on the week. Expecting to lose a couple carries this week with Debo being back. And that takes us to our pass catchers. Wide receiver 13 of the week is Brandon Ayuk. You saw him have a little bit of an issue this week at practice. You haven't seen much out of him. I get it if you got to start him, but I haven't liked what I've seen out of him so far. Debo Samuel, kind of interested to see what he's going to look like this week. For me, he is a start due to the fact that with his rushing upside. And then wide receiver 28, Juwan Jennings. I get it with injuries. You may play him. I'm interested to see if his role will be diminished with both Debo and Kittle back, but I get it if you're starting him. And Kittle is back, tight end 18 on the week. I'm starting him simply because there's not many better options out there. Coach, anything you would change there?
No, just digging into this game a little bit more. I still like Juwan Jennings this week. I get it with everybody back, but I think he did enough last week. How do you not get him in your lineups? So and when I say in your lineup, what I mean is Shanahan getting him on the field and getting him reps and getting him involved in the game. I think last week was a coming out party for him, and I think he's still going to be involved. It gives you an opportunity to nurse Debo a little bit more. I still think Juwan Jennings is very much a factor in play here this week.
I mean, he's wide receiver 28 on the week. So if you're in, if you got rosters with multiple flex spots, he is a start. Let's move on. We've got Alex Johnson tuning in before he gets to his own show. He's not sure Jacoby gets through this game, and I wouldn't be surprised with that as well. Let's go. Washington Commanders 2-1 at Arizona Cardinals 1-2. I like the Cardinals in a high-scoring game. Cardinals 32, Commanders 28. Who do you like, Coach?
Yeah, I think it's a high-scoring game as well. I've got Cardinals 31, Washington Commanders 27. Washington has the NFL's worst defense. Now they got to travel to the West Coast on a short week. I'll take the Cardinals at home.
Okay, Washington start and sit. Their offense is 5th in scoring, 5th in rushing yards, and 15th in passing yards. Arizona defense 18 in points allowed, 19 in rushing yards, and 16th in pass. Who do you like in this one, or who do you like to start for Washington?
So Washington's been impressive the last couple of games, man. It's 2 straight games without a punt or a turnover. You know, that's a pretty big deal in the NFL. I don't care who you're playing. But Jaden Daniels had his coming out party last week as a passer against the Bengals, led the Commanders to a road win while setting the NFL record with a 91.3% completion rate as a rookie. Went 21-23 for 245 yards and 2 touchdowns while rushing for another 39 yards on a score on the ground. Leads the NFL with an 80.3% completion rate through 3 games while throwing for 664 yards and rushing for another 171 yards with 5 total touchdowns and 0 interceptions. I'm huge on Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson Jr. With Austin Eckler out. He has been involved in the passing game a little bit. You're going to see him a little bit more involved this week. 75% snap share, 62% rush rate. I like Brian Robinson this week. I think he finds the end zone. That's another player prop bet that I like this week for an anytime touchdown. Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 2 territory this week with wide receiver 1 upside through the first 2 weeks of the season. Jaden Daniels getting used to life in the NFL. McLaurin had just 39 yards on 8 grabs, but last week, obviously, he was big with 100 yards on 4 grabs and a touchdown. This is a great matchup against Arizona, so I like McLaurin. And then Zach Ertz, the guy last week, 79% route participation, 18% target share in this offense through 3 games. He saw 23% targets per route run last week and 22% target share. I like him. Only 5 grabs for 38 yards. I think he finds the end zone this week. I think it's going to become more of a security blanket, especially in 3rd down and 1st down situations. So I like Zach Ertz this week as well. I'm out on Luke McCaffrey, just not enough there. And Noah Brown, I like the addition of that offense, but I don't think they're going to support 3 pass catchers right now. So I'm out on those guys.
All right, let's get to the Arizona start and sit before we get back to questions. We've got Arizona offense 4th in scoring, 9th in rushing, 17th in pass. Washington defense 29th in points allowed, 17th in rushing yards, and 31st in passing yards. Kyler Murray must start, quarterback 2 on the week. Don't overthink it. Washington's defense has given up the 2nd most points to quarterbacks. Running back 7 on the week, James Conner must start. He's got 46 carries for 189 yards and 2 TDs in 2024. Wide receiver 8, Marvin Harrison must start. See Washington's defense. And then Michael Wilson, I think he's a sneaky start for me. I like what we saw at him last week. Plus, you've got no Trey McBride. So obviously you're not starting Trey McBride at tight end. Elijah Higgins could be a sneaky start for you as well. He's gotten in the end zone this season, and he may be playable this week with all the injuries to tight ends and the low performances. Let's get to some questions. Here we go. It looks like we've got, what do we got there? I need one receiver, Debo, Rashid, or Terry. For me, it's Terry. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Yeah, it's Terry for me as well.
Okay, let's go to Dalton here. Dalton's got start 2, Pittman, Waddle, D-Hop, Jameson Williams. This is a tough one for me. I don't like Waddle with no Tua. Not a fan of Pittman with what we've got for the quarterback situation in Indianapolis. So that leads us with D-Hop and Jameson Williams. If you saw D-Hop last, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago against the Green Bay, that was last week. You saw that he was the only receiver that really did much. So I like D-Hop and Jameson Williams.
Yep, I agree with you. I like D-Hop as well. We're seeing his snap share come up and his target share come up. So I like D-Hop and Jameson Williams this week.
And how about Fields or Purdy, Coach?
So, I think the Steelers game is a good matchup. It can go either way, right? It could be a low-scoring slugfest, but I still like Justin Fields with the rushing upside. But I like Purdy overall. I think the 49ers, again, they're going to put up 30, I think, this week against New England. So I would go Brock Purdy there.
All right, Christian's got a question. Start 2, T, Terry, or Reed with Love back. For me, I kind of want to do a wait and see if I can with Reed and with Love coming back. So it's T and Terry. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, we've talked about T and Terry and other start and sit questions. Both like McLaurin this week, both like T. Higgins this week, and I'm with you on Jaden Reed. Love him. I think he's the alpha wide receiver in that offense, but Jordan Love's first came back. Let's wait and see on Jaden Reed.
Here we go. Oh, so Jace is helping us out with an answer to a question. So thank you so much for tuning in, Jace. Let's move on. Kansas City Chiefs 3-0 at Los Angeles Chargers 2-1. I got the Chiefs winning 24-10. What says you, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Chiefs at where did I go? 23-17 Kansas City. So I've got them getting the win this week.
Kansas City start and sit. Kansas City offense, 7th in scoring, 15 in rushing, 12th in passing. Los Angeles Chargers defense, 3rd in points allowed, 7 in rushing yards, and 10th in passing yards. Who are we starting for Kansas City?
Yeah, so you got Derwin James out, you got Joey Bosa out. I know Jace was talking about this in the thread, but also have their left tackle and right tackle out this week. It's a tough deal for the Chargers, but I still think Patrick Mahomes, to me, he's in that territory, but he's not a must start anymore. I know that sounds crazy, but you're facing a good defense this week. You're facing a team that likes to slow the ball down, run the football, use the clock. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of plays on the offensive side of the ball for Kansas City. Mahomes, 659 yards passing through 3 games, the lowest of his career start of season. He's been outside the top 12 in fantasy points for 8 consecutive games. Has not finished in the top 8 since week 7 of last season. He's not a must start in one quarterback leagues, but based on where you took him, right, there's the game. Who do you have as your QB2 that you would put in over Patrick Mahomes? So he's probably playing, but I don't love him. I don't think he's a must start. Carson, let's talk about the backfield real quick. Carson Steele, Samaj P. Ryan, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is activated. He's on the 53-man roster. He's going to see some touches this week. Carson Steele's a great story. 64% snap share, 61% rush share last week. But he's a 4.7, 740 guy. There's not a lot of speed there. He runs hard. I like Carson Steele, but I don't like him playing this week with the 3-headed backfield. I think Samaj P. Ryan is the odd man out there. Rashee Rice, the only pass catcher that I trust. He's got 12 grabs, 110 yards, and a score last week. He's now seen 29 targets in 3 games, so Rashee Rice is in your lineups. I don't trust Travis Kelce. 9 straight games without a touchdown. He's no longer a must-start in fantasy either. Who would have thought we'd be at a time where Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are not must-starts? But just 8 grabs for 69 yards on the year. And Chargers have held tight ends the 6th lowest yards per reception and have not allowed a touchdown to tight ends this season. I'm out on Travis Kelce.
All right, while I'm going over the Los Angeles start and sit, why don't you take a look at Steven's question here, and we'll get to more questions as soon as we're done with Los Angeles. But the Los Angeles Chargers offense, 17th in scoring, 7th in rushing, 31st in passing. KC defense, 15th in points allowed, 13th in rushing yards, 28th in passing yards. Quarterback 30 on the week, Justin Herbert. Injury current concerns and a tough defensive matchup make him a sit for me. J.K. Dobbins, he's a start, but he's facing the top 10 defense versus running backs. Gus Edwards, sit. Quentin Johnson, sit. Ladd McConkey, 38 wide receiver on the week, 25.8. He's got a 25.8% target share on the year. Numbers will improve for Ladd going forward, but he's still a sit. So basically, the only start I have for Los Angeles Chargers is J.K. Dobbins. You ready for a question here, Coach?
I am.
All right, we've got Steven wanting to know Carson Steele, Ladd McConkey. It's Carson Steele over those 2 for me. Waiver wire, if you want a spicy waiver wire, I like Trey Tucker. Pick him up, start him over either one of those 2. But that is a ceiling play.
Yeah, we haven't got the Raiders matchup yet, but I like Trey Tucker this week in that game too. So over Carson Steele and Ladd McConkey. So if I'm picking up one of those guys, it's Trey Tucker for me as well.
All right, let's get to Jacqueline here. I like Jacqueline's question because it's a good problem to have. Who are we sitting? We're going to sit Gibbs, Connor, Henry, Evans, or Metcalf. It's a tough one, Coach. I don't think I'm sitting Gibbs. I don't think I'm sitting Connor. Henry versus Buffalo, that could be one that I might sit. Or Evans or Metcalf. Who are you starting in the standard scoring league?
It's crazy because normally the first thing I do with these questions, you got 4 or 5 players. Hey, who am I going to eliminate from this list? And let's narrow it down. But there's not a guy on that list that I don't have starting this week. So I like all of them. I think of what we've seen so far this year, Mike Evans has not hit his stride yet. Chris Godwin moving back to the slot has taken over the number 1 position there. But Mike Evans always gives you touchdown upside. But I had to pick one guy to sit in that group. It's between Derrick Henry and Mike Evans, again, because of the matchup with Buffalo for Derrick Henry. God, man, I probably would lean, honestly, Derrick Henry would probably be the guy I would sit.
Okay, so the coach approach, Jacqueline says, sit Derrick Henry. I know that's sick after seeing what he did last week against that terrible defense of Dallas.
Yep.
So that's all I get out of you is yep. I tried to poke the bear a little bit, and you can't even argue with
Well,
me.
because, shoot, you're talking about five people that we all – it's 5 players that we all like. So it's tough. When that's your decision, man, that's a stacked and loaded team that you've got there, Jacqueline, so I love it.
There we go. Let's move on. Cleveland Browns 1-2 at Los Angeles. At Las Vegas Raiders 1-2. I got Browns winning 17-14. Who do you like, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Browns 20, Raiders 17, so we're close there. I think Max Crosby and Devontae Adams out. I'll take Cleveland to get the road win.
Cleveland start and sit. Cleveland's offense 25th in scoring, 24th in rushing yards, 30th in passing yards. Las Vegas defense 27th points allowed, 29th rushing yards, and 23rd in passing yards. Who do you have starting for Cleveland?
So I've got Jerome Ford. I trust in my lineup. Las Vegas gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs and a 3rd most rushing yards. Chuba Hubbard went off last week against the Raiders. I'm locked in on Jerome Ford this week. Amari Cooper, revenge game. I think it is. Raiders are giving up 35 fantasy points to the wide receiver position. I'm good starting Amari Cooper this week. And as far as sits go, Deontay Foreman, we thought last week might be an opportunity for him to get involved more. He did not. Only saw 14 carries in week 2. Foreman only got 2 carries for 5 yards last week. And then Elijah Moore, averaging only 6 targets a game, which is not terrible, but only 11 grabs for 70 yards on the season. No touchdowns. So I'm out on Elijah Moore. Deshaun Watson's interesting to me this week. Through 15 games with the Cleveland Browns, Watson has never thrown for 300 yards in a game. He's averaging just 183 yards through the air over the first 3 weeks. He was sacked 8 times last week. Lucky for Deshaun, Max Crosby's out this week. The Raiders gave up 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to Andy Dalton. I'm not putting Deshaun Watson as a passer in the same category as Andy Dalton. But if there is a get-right game for Mr. Watson, this is it. So if you have Deshaun Watson and in Superflex, I'm okay playing him. 1 quarterback league, not a chance he's sitting in my lineup.
Let's move on. Las Vegas starting to sit. Las Vegas offense ranking 17th in scoring, 32 in rushing, 4th in passing. Facing a Cleveland defense that's 20th in scoring, 13th in rushing, 15th in passing. Kind of expect a little better numbers with the roster they have, but that's where they're at so far. And for me, this is an easy one. I'm only starting one guy in this roster, and that's Brock Bowers. You got no Michael Mayer. You've got no Devontae Adams. Bowers is going to get a crap load of targets today. I like Bowers. But if I had to, I could see starting Jacoby Myers and or Trey Tucker in a pinch need. Coach, anything you would change on that one?
No, I'm good there. I mean, obviously we love Brock Bowers. I think that's the one guy in that lineup that you feel confident in playing. But other than that, I mean, and Trey Tucker. We talked about Trey Tucker. We like him this week, even over Jacoby Myers.
Buffalo Bills 3-0 at Baltimore Ravens 1-2. I like Buffalo winning 27, Ravens 24. Who do you like in this one?
I've got Buffalo 25, Ravens 22 in a close game. I think Buffalo goes in there and steals a win. Bills have played Cardinals, Dolphins, and Jaguars, right? They're 3-0, but let's be real. They haven't played anybody yet. This is the first big test, and it's on the road. But I just believe in the way Josh Allen's playing football right now, and I think they go in there and get a win.
Like it. Buffalo starts sit. Buffalo offense, 1st in scoring, 14th in rushing, 14th in passing. Nice balanced offense right there. Baltimore defense, 24 in points allowed, 1st in rushing, 32nd in passing. Who are we starting for Buffalo?
Josh Allen. He's the MVP right now, I think, of the season right now. He's leading the team to 3-0. He's completing 75% of his passes. He has 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I think he's led the NFL in turnovers since he came in the league. So that's a massive stride forward for him. So I'm starting Josh Allen. James Cook, it's a tough matchup on paper, but he's got 4 touchdowns in 3 games of 285 scrimmage yards. He gives it to you on the ground, but he also gives it to you in the passing game. I'm still starting James Cook. He's probably an RB2 this week with RB1 upside, even in a tough matchup. Then Khalil Shakir, I talked all offseason how I felt like Khalil Shakir was going to lead the wide receiver room in receptions and targets. He's doing just that. Through 3 games, he's caught all 14 targets for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's a wide receiver 20 in PPR scoring with a 19.2% target share. So I'm in on Khalil Shakir. And then Dalton Kincaid. We talked about him earlier in some start and sit questions. I'm still high on the talent. I think he finds the end zone this week. And then I'm out on Keon Coleman. Just have not seen enough from him. And there are rumors he has been showing up late to team meetings. Might have played a role in him not seeing as many snaps last week. So I'm out on Keon Coleman. I like the talent, but I'm out. And Curtis Samuel. There's 7 grabs for 40 yards in 3 games with no touchdowns this year. I think we thought Curtis Samuel would have a bigger role this year in the offense, but he has not. So anything you would change there?
I don't think so. And we have a Dalton Kincaid question up right now with Anthony, so we might as well hit it. You talk about trusting Kincaid's talent. Well, last week you saw him get in the end zone, so that was great to see. So Kincaid's tight end 1 for a lot of people this week. So that's Kincaid over Laporta for me. But oh my gosh, Anthony, I am huge on tight ends. Load up on tight ends. That's a great roster if you got both those guys.
Yep, I love it. Right there with you.
Baltimore offensive rankings, 11th in scoring, 2nd in rushing, 10th in passing. Buffalo defense, 7th in scoring, 16th against the rush, 8th against the pass. Lamar Jackson, quarterback 3 on the week. He's a must start. Running back 13, to me, is a must start unless you got the lineup that Jacqueline has. And then we go Justice Hill. He's a sit. Wide receiver 18, Zay Flowers. Only had 4 targets in week 3. He's a start, but expect Baltimore to lean heavy in the run game. Wide receiver 16, Rashad Bateman. He's a sit. That's got to be a typo, wide receiver 16. But I did see him. He looked good against Dallas. We brought up the Dallas defense already, but he did get in the end zone. And as someone who everybody was high on when he came out of the University of Minnesota, it's nice to see him healthy and starting to get involved in passing game. Tight ends, we talked about this. Only one target last week for Mark Andrews. He's still the tight end on the tight end 8. He does have a rough matchup, and that's tight end 8 as far as in rankings going into this week, not tight end 8 on the season. Right. Rough matchup. I don't like starting him, but I get it if you have to. And Isaiah Likely, I'm not starting him because you haven't seen much since week 1. Let's move on. Tennessee. We've got Tennessee Titans 0-3 Monday Night Football at the Miami Dolphins 1-2. My pick, I like the Dolphins with Snoop playing this week, 21, Titans 13. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
That's in double OP, DO double G, right? I got Miami Dolphins 24, Tennessee Titans 19. I'm with you on Snoopalicious with Tyler Huntley getting the win this week for Miami.
Okay, let's get in. Tennessee start sit. Tennessee's offense, 28th in scoring, 20th in rushing, 28th in passing. Miami defensive ranks 22 in points allowed, 12 in rushing, and 12 in passing. Who do you like, if anybody, for Tennessee?
Well, I'm out on Will Levis. I mean, the good news is his completion percentage has improved every week. He's thrown a touchdown pass in every game. He's contributed 86 yards on the ground. The bad news, he's thrown 5 interceptions in 3 games and been sacked 15 times, so I don't trust Will Levis. Tony Pollard, he's taken over as the RB1. We thought we'd see more of a split with Spears. Has not been the case. And Miami gives up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. So as long as Pollard continues to see a 65% snap share and 68% of the rushing, I'm in on Tony Pollard. Calvin Ridley, D-Hop. I prefer D-Hop over Calvin Ridley. I don't think either of those guys are a must start, but I do like D-Hop better based on what we've seen. I think he gives you more touchdown upside. And I'm out on Tyler Boyd and Chigakonkwo. Not enough volume and touches to see there.
Miami starting said Miami offense. They're 32nd in scoring, 25th in rushing, and 11th in passing. Tennessee defense, 24 points allowed, 20th in rushing yards, 3rd for passing yards. Let's go quarterback 33 on the week, Tyler Huntley. I think this makes their offense a little more viable, but he is a sit for me. Running back 11, Devon A-Chain. If you have him, you're starting him. Jalen Wright and Jeff Wilson are both got outsnapped by Alec Ingold last week, so they cannot be started. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 21 on the week. He's the only wide receiver I'm starting, the only player I'm starting other than A-Chain. So he's a start. I think Tyler can get a deep ball to Hill. So I do think I'm playing Hill no matter what. Anybody else you would change in that, Coach?
No, I'm right there with you, man. I don't have a single thing I would do differently there.
All right, let's get to a couple questions. We've got Brian. He's talking to you exclusively here. You've got must-win situation. I have Mahomes, but Darnold and Dalton on the waiver wire. Do I need to win? Be bold. Who would you start, Coach?
Some of these questions, right? It's crazy. We just talked about Patrick Mahomes, right? Like we're not seeing the passing volume we're used to seeing. We're seeing we'll rely a little more on the run game. But man, when you're talking about Dalton, right? He had a great game last week in his first game back. Deontay Johnson's back in the fold. Chuba Hubbard, obviously the run game opens up with what Dalton gives you. Darnold, if Jair Alexander's playing, which I think he probably will. He's out. So man, that's a tough one, but I still think that's a game where both teams are going to try to run the football a little bit and try to establish the run, which means the clock is going to be running. So I would struggle in that one to probably play Sam Darnold there because I think it's a lower scoring game. I'm not afraid to go Dalton over Mahomes, man. If Carolina's losing that game, it's a negative game script. What's that mean? That means Dalton's throwing the rock. So there's an opportunity there to get another, 275 plus yard game with a couple tutties.
Hunter's got a question, and this has got to be a question for you because we talked about it. I am not a gambler. The only money I put in is the money I do for my fantasy football. Any betting I do is across the street at the golf course. So with that being said, are there any spreads, money lines that you're confident in today, Coach?
Yeah, so it's funny that Hunter asked that question this week. This is the first week I think we've done it without doing the spreads and the over-under. So I don't have it pulled up right now, but I've got Hunter's contact info, Hunter, so I'll get back to you when I get a chance to take a look here in a little bit.
All right. We've got Todd needing Ford to go off today, and that leads us to Jason's question. Who do you like better? Look at your running back rankings, coach. You like Jerome Ford or Najee Harris? For me, without looking at rankings, I like Harris due to the fact that Warren is out. I know Patterson is someone that they utilize, but it's Harris for me.
Yeah, I think there's more trust there in the Pittsburgh offense as well. So I would go Najee Harris. I would lean there. I just think the volume's going to be there with Jalen Warren out.
Okay, JC wants to know Jacobs or Chuba Hubbard. I'm going Jacobs. You talked about how that game with the Minnesota Vikings should be heavily run attack. And then let's move on. Is you good with that one too, Coach?
Yep.
Anthony wants to know golf or Fields, full PPR. For me, I like Fields. I know Goff has got a tough matchup against Seattle, but I like Fields and what he's been able to do so far this year. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, I like Fields too with the rushing upside. And I think this is a boom game for George Pickens as well. I think Pickens finds the end zone. So I think you could see Fields get a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown this week. So I like Fields.
And then we've got Lazard or Olave. I get that Lazard has looked well reuniting or getting his quarterback on the field this year. But when you got a talent like Olave, I can't sit him, even though he did come into it injured, but he is going to play.
Yeah, I like Olave there too. As much as I like Lazard and the connection he's got with Aaron Rodgers, I still think that Mike Williams is seeing more snaps. And of course, Garrett Wilson does draw the tough matchup, but I still lean Olave there for sure.
Okay, let's get into our last game, Coach. Seattle Seahawks 3-0 at Detroit Lions 2-1 Monday Night Football. My pick, I like Detroit winning, bouncing back after last week's loss. I like them winning 27-17. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Detroit Lions 31, Seattle Seahawks 23. I've got the Detroit Lions winning at home in a tough matchup.
Okay, let's go. Seattle start and sit. Seattle offense 9 in scoring, 23 in rushing, 3rd in passing. Detroit defense 9 points allowed, 4 rushing yards, 4th in rushing yards, and 19th in passing yards. Who are your starting sits for Seattle?
Yeah, so I think this is going to be interesting because Seattle's won 6 straight games against the Lions, including the playoffs, but the 3 wins this season come against Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. So, so Geno Smith this week for me is a start. The Lions have given up the 12th most passing yards this season, and Geno's finished as a top 10 quarterback in 2 out of 3 weeks this season and gets a plus matchup this week. So I like Geno Smith. Kenneth Walker is back. He was limited in practice on Thursday and Friday, but he's off the injury report with the oblique and will play this week. Unfortunately, not a great matchup for running backs. The Lions run defense allows the 2nd most explosive run rate and yards after contact per attempt and the 6th lowest missed tackle rate. So they also only give up 8.8 fantasy points per game to running backs. Kenneth Walker could be on a pitch count, so I don't trust him unless I have to put him in the lineup, depending on who you have at running back. He's not. I'm not saying sit the guy because I think probably based on who you have, Kenneth Walker's probably a guy you got to put in your lineup. I'm just saying he's not a must start for me, which obviously knocks Zach Charbonnet into probably a guy you're not playing this week with Kenneth Walker back, although he's filled in nicely over the last couple of weeks. Big on DK Metcalf this week. Detroit gives up the most targets, receptions, and yards to wide receivers on the perimeter. He's been targeted 20 times over the last 2 games and hauled in 14 for 233 and 2 touchdowns. So he's in my lineup. Jackson Smith and Jigba. Detroit also allows the highest completion rate to slot receivers, and Jackson Smith and Jigba to me is a play this week. And that's it. I'm not starting Noah Fant this week. And then Tyler Lockett, I think he's 3rd in the pecking order unless he hits a deep ball for a touchdown. I still like Jackson Smith and Jigba in the slot against Detroit and DK Metcalf on the perimeter.
Here we go. Let's get into Detroit start and sit. Detroit's offense 16th in scoring, 4th in rushing, 7th in passing. Seattle defense 4th in points allowed, 15th in rushing yards, 1st in passing yards allowed. Quarterback 16 on the week, Jared Goff. He's a start in Superflex. He struggled statistically on the year, ranking quarterback 24 on the season. Must starts for me, Jahmyr Gibbs, 40 carries, 207 yards, and a touchdown, and has added 11 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown last week. That touchdown came on a reception that he didn't get. If you saw the lateral, beautiful play, and I know for me, I needed Gibbs' touchdown, so that was nice to see. Running back 19, David Montgomery. He's a start for me as well. He's not a must start because I think Gibbs' uptick has been happening in the last few weeks, but I get it. I like Montgomery as a start just because he's still getting great volume. And then you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a must start. I like Jameson Williams this week, so he's a start. And then tight end 17 on the week, and he was kind of that low because he showed up on the injury report. but that's Sam Laporta. He's a must start for me. Anything that you would change in any of that, Coach?
No, it's like we talked about with Detroit's offense, man. I know it's been a struggle. Of course, Seattle hasn't played real tough competition yet this year, so it's going to be interesting how this game goes. But I don't know how you sit any of these guys in Detroit that you've mentioned.
Okay,
Right.
let's get to another couple questions before we call it a day and get to watching football. And that is, someone dropped Jordan Love in my league. Should I drop Caleb Williams? Love is bad 16-17 through the playoffs, but you have Josh Allen as your quarterback one. For me, I would make that move. You don't. I would assume this is one quarterback league, so you don't have to start him. But I'm taking Jordan Love the rest of the year over Caleb Williams. What about you, Coach?
Well, I'm going to give this because you're a Packer fan. Some people might think that's a biased answer, but the reality is I know you well enough to know that it is not. I will definitely take Jordan Love over Caleb Williams rest of season and in the playoffs.
Okay, Aiden, he's a little stressed out because Lazard might be a boom because of Garrett Wilson going against Patrick Surtain. I have Wilson under the radar. It's hard for me to argue with that. Patrick Surtain is obviously, if you looked on Twitter this week, they posted they've over-posted what he's done so far against number one receiver. So I get the logic in that. And then we got Anthony. Anthony wants to know, how do you guys feel about Allen taking touches from Brees? I have Brees, but believe he'll be fine throughout possible load. Absolutely. This is a load management play. I don't think they came into the year knowing that Braylon was going to be what he is. I get it. I have a lot of Brees Hall, so you don't like to see it. But if that's going to keep Brees Hall in the field for 17 games, I'm going to be fine with it. So, yes, I'm not overly concerned about the output for Hall going forward.
Zero concern for me.
Okay, CD Smitty, flex one, Ford, Dobbins, Odunze, Addison, or Pittman. Who are you flexing in that group, Coach?
So for me, it comes down to Jerome Ford, obviously as a runner. I don't know if this is PPR, half PPR, or standard. Obviously, if it's standard, I lean Ford to get the rushing volume there. I do think Ford finds the end zone this week. And then it's Odunze for me as the other guy that I would put in there. You can make an argument for Addison, but his first game back, it's a tough matchup. I'm not there yet. So between Odunze and Ford, I'll trust Ford with the rushing upside. If it is PPR, then I would go Rome Odunze.
Okay, we've got another one. Flex one. We've got Ford, Dobbins. Did we already do that one?
That's the one I just answered. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you for keeping up, Coach. Let's go. We've got who are you starting, Jameson Williams or Garrett Wilson? I get it. Everyone wants to talk about Patrick Surtain, but I'm still going Garrett. How about you?
Yeah, and that one, Jameson's the targets are up, but I'm still going Garrett Wilson in that matchup.
Para plays, Shakir Akers. It's Shakir for me. What about you, Coach?
Yep, it's Shakir for me as well.
And then we've got Lucas. This probably is going to be the last question before we get into a couple of little quick comments, but that is Lucas, pick three, Mondre, Kenneth, or Dobbins, and Akers. For me, it's the first three. I know you have concerns about Kenneth versus Detroit, so are you going to play Akers over Kenneth?
No, I don't trust Akers over Kenneth. No, I think the talent for Kenneth is there.
All right, we've got Tyler Algier or Rashawn Johnson. This is mostly to pick somebody else going forward. Do you stash Algier because he has Bijan and you want the handcuff, or do you get ballsy and think that Rashawn's going to take over the backfield from Swift? Now you got two starters to play with. So it's Rashawn for me, but what about you, Coach?
Yeah, you played the same way I do, and I get in this debate probably every offseason. I'm a big believer in handcuffing other teams' running backs, especially if they're going to see RB1 volume if that RB1 is out, because now you've got two RB1s in your lineup versus if I do my own running back, I go from an RB1 to probably an RB2. Tyler Algier obviously doesn't give you the same in the passing game that Bijan Robinson does, so it's not like it's a one-for-one trade there. So I like Rashawn Johnson and going that route as well.
The only two guys that I would not do that with would be Braylon Allen and David Montgomery and maybe Bucky Irving, because
those are RB1 guys.
Yep. Those are guys I'm good with them stashing if you've got the 100%. Other guy, just because they're guys that you can play even if the other guy is not hurt. That's it, Coach. Great show. Thank you so much. Again, if you guys all can do us a big favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We plan on being back. No flag football game this week for my daughters. You are traveling, so let's make it a little easier on you. We will be live Wednesday night at 7 p.m., not our normal 6 p.m. Gives Coach a little bit more time to get there from Vegas to his hotel in Ontario. Would love to have the same crowd. Appreciate you all. Coach, best of luck today in all your lineups, except for the ones that we're playing in.
Yeah, hey, and if you guys want to reach us on Twitter at Coach Bruce 122 and then at Brett L. Pate for Brett. You guys have questions during the week. If you have questions during the games throughout the slate, if you've got questions about prop bets and whatnot, more than happy to answer those questions as well. Appreciate you guys for tuning in.
Coach.
You too, man. Talk to you soon.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much.